Sounds like Michael Penix is rising up draft boards a little bit, so let's talk about why that could be. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who make Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. You can find the show anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, whether it is an app like SiriusXM or YouTube or even Amazon Fire and Roku if you just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app on that smart TV. Today on the show, I want to go deeper into the ins and outs of Michael Penix's game. I did it once a couple months ago, and I think it warrants another conversation now that we've got a little bit more context. He was the second QB I did, so it was like now that we have a little more context around all the QBs and we know a little bit more about the landscape of the draft, I think it's worth rehashing. So you can go listen to that one as well. But there was something that kind of got in my head about Penix that I saw yesterday from Ben Albright, who is talking about Penix a lot because he covers the Broncos, right? And he said that, like, oh, there are a lot of people in the league that see him as like a home run hitter, but not in a good way. It's like a home run hitter only. Is all he does is go balls and stuff. And I get where that's coming from. But I also think that I find it reductive as a point that somebody's making. And that's not a point that Ben's making. It's a point that people that probably are in the Broncos are making. And I think that's really interesting. So today, let's just talk about Penix as a quarterback and what he does that is making him a possible. I kind of see him like it feels like he's going to go in the bottom half of the first round, which feels steep to me, but who cares what I think? And then I'll get into some of the nitty gritty of like mechanics and what I didn't like from his tape that kind of makes me a little more sour on him. But the home run hitter thing, so let me try to explain what I'm talking about here. Washington's offense was predicated on explosive plays, particularly to Rome Odunze. And I think there is something of a mirror that gets held up to you when you have to figure out how to evaluate two guys in a really, really good QB wide receiver connection. Because the Penix Odunze connection was insane. Brought them all the way to the championship, right? It was awesome. And for me, when I see that, I'm trying to figure out who drove that, right? Who was, who's the guy in that pair and who's the guy that's just supporting it, right? And you think of the great duos of all time, right? Manning and Marvin Harrison, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's both, right? So being able to separate those is a skill, a really important skill when it comes to actually evaluating tape, watching tape, being able to look at, a really cool deep ball and say, okay, who did that, right? Who gets the credit for that? And that's something that, you're never going to get if you're just looking at stats. And when I talk about Penix on this show, I hear a lot of it from those of you who watch on YouTube, which, hey, my YouTube everydayers, love y'all very much. But a lot of it is, well, here he got this many yards, he made it this far, look at the stats. And especially when it comes to box score stats, I just don't respect box score stats. If you're going to give me like a statistical argument, you got to at least go a little bit advanced, right? And when you do that, you see like problems with accuracy percentage, and I'll get into that, right? But a lot of it is born in you just hooked up Rome Odunze is better than you footballs. And when I watch those go balls, I don't necessarily see Penix creating opportunities for Rome Odunze. And again, let me explain what I'm talking about here. So when you run a go route as a wide receiver, you usually will run that on the red line, which if you look at a practice field, there's a line about 5 yards in from the sideline or like 4 yards in from the sideline. That's like this red line. That's a nice little aiming point that quarterbacks use to practice throwing go balls, that wide receivers use as a landmark to run their routes. And the space between the red line and the sideline is kind of golden real estate when it comes to a go ball. When you're a defensive back trying to cover, a lot of what they will tell you to do if you're covering against a go ball with inside leverage, you're supposed to work that to the outside and squeeze him to the sideline, right? Xavier Rhodes was unbelievably good at this. Squeeze him to the sideline, remove that space. And a quarterback can make a go ball better by essentially identifying when that is happening and landing that ball right there on the sideline. So you can get, drop it in the bucket, toe tapping catch, give your receiver a chance to do it. And sometimes it's even right to put that ball like maybe a foot into the sideline to give the receiver a chance to actually reach out, get it, tap his toes, right? Set up your guy to go make a play and also trust your guy to go make a play. You don't throw that ball and like that foot outside the sideline pass, if your wide receiver isn't good, that thing's incomplete for sure. So you have to have your trust in that receiver. And with Odunze and Penix, they definitely had that trust. And Odunze absolutely earned that trust. Of course he did, right? And I think whoever he goes to next will earn that same trust. And so the question is, what do we think about Penix when he does that? And it's hard for me because it's like, well, he did exactly what you want him to do, right? Like you wouldn't change anything about that, but what does it tell you that he is capable of? And for me, I don't think he trusted Odunze, but I think he just kind of threw him up there. I didn't see that same kind of precision on those go balls that made Rome Odunze's job easier. I think Rome Odunze made Penix's job easier by coming back through DBs, by winning jump balls. And so a lot of those passes were just, hey, we're in one-on-one and I like the matchup. I'm just going to put it up and trust that my guy's going to come down with it rather than put it up in a way that has a precise purpose to make it easier for my guy to come down with it. This is a very nitpicky thing, right? I don't look at these go balls and go, nah, not very good, right? Like they're good passes. But what separates like a college QB from an NFL QB is being able to elevate those skill sets. And when you hear about a QB elevating the guys around him, when I say it, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about is, do you make their job easier or do you just trust them to do their job? The latter ain't so bad a thing. I'm not mad at it at all. It's just different, right? It's something that other guys are going to have on you. So maybe when you hear, oh, he's just a home run guy, maybe that's what it is. And because so much of Washington's offense was send Rome deep and throw the ball up, and why wouldn't you if you're the Huskies? It creates this concern about like, okay, but what about when he has to like operate a timing-based NFL offense? And for me, the timing was like fine for Penix, but what I really liked about Penix's deep game was the way that he read the field. He's a smart quarterback. That's what really, I think the main draw of what you're getting with Penix is that he is right off the bat smart. So I might put him in, this is not a good comp, but I think the career trajectory of somebody like Mac Jones kind of makes sense there. And I'll explain a lot more about what I mean by him being smart, a good processor and all that stuff in a little bit. But when you have a QB that sees it and whose brain works really well, I love the way that Penix's brain actually like sees it and works. But you have this consistency ceiling with accuracy where, okay, how many times in the game are you going to whiff? And we can never get that down to zero, right? That's the concern. Then you get this world where you start out really hot because you're looking better than all the other rookie quarterbacks who are adjusting to the NFL, but your brain is really good, so you can see it and you can adjust to the NFL game really well. And then you kind of fall off as other guys surpass you. And that's what happened with Mac Jones. I wonder if that happens with Penix as well. But that's great if you're, looking, if you're a really good team looking for somebody that can compete right now, and you're looking for somebody to, you're a contender and you're looking for a really, really quality backup. I don't think Penix is like a backup quality QB. Don't get me wrong there. But that's the kind of thing where you go, oh no, we got to put the rookie in. It's fine. He understands it. Let me explain more about what I mean by like that processing and why I like the way his brain works. And then we'll talk about the accuracy issues. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning any championship. And it's also the formula for taking good care of your car. Your car is an extension of you. It is part of your personality. It gets you from point A to point B. It's an important part of your life, but your car is also a way to express yourself. And if you are looking for a way to either just take care of that thing or make it truly yours with a supercharger or a roof rack or an LED headlight or whatever it is, whether you're into power or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your car, and you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. So with eBay Motors, it is easy to get whatever it is you want, whatever it is you need for your ride or die. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thanks a million for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day that it is posted in the morning. When you're done here, though, go flip over to the Locked On Minnesota Sports live streaming channel where you can hang out there 24/7 Minnesota sports talking. Boy, there is a lot to talk about in the world of Minnesota sports right now, including but not limited to where the Vikings are at. But let's move on now to what I'm talking about with the processing. So one of the things that I look for when I look at quarterbacks is when you're throwing deep, and sometimes it's short, but mostly deep, are you looking at defenders or are you looking at receivers? And I want you to be looking at defenders and throwing to spots and trusting that your receivers will chase it down. And I think this is one of the things that people get really wrong when it comes to separating wide receiver from quarterback. Because you will see a throw that doesn't perfectly lead the receiver, but it does perfectly split the defender, and then the receiver has to adjust or make something happen. In my opinion, that is exactly what I want out of a throw. I want you to perfectly split defenders. I want you to make it so the defenders do not exist in that throw, and then trust that the really good athlete that you're throwing to can do a little bit of something, right? And I think that's the best way to maximize offense, right? Because if you have to constantly put it on the receiver's body or else they can't do anything, then you're really limited in what throwing windows you can take advantage of and what you can do. And it's a lot easier for the defense to say, okay, this guy can't adjust. He doesn't account for as big of an area. We don't have to cover as much grass against this guy, right? But if that receiver can adjust a little bit and you're willing to take advantage of that, in a purposeful way, right? Not just, oops, I missed a little bit and he can make up for it. But hey, if I miss this guy a little bit, if I throw it a little bit wider than he wants me to, I take that safety out of the play and he can still go run that down. Like that opens up your options, right? And I think Penix is really good at that when it comes to the deep stuff. Not only that, but you can see him responding to safety rotations, and in particular safety stuff. When he sees a too high setup from the snap, from pre-snap, and then one of them buzzes down. So, oops, we've got, cover 3 buzz, or we've got like cover 1 robber. Oh, they were trying to trick me. One of the best things that you'll get, and Washington got college defenses on this like a bunch, is if you have a backside post running right at where that safety buzzed down from, right? If you can kind of visualize with me. You can just think of it like a safety is coming down out of the roof, like out of the deep part of the field, and you're running a post right to where he left. That's beautiful. We love that, right? That's basically you caught him with their pants down, trying to pull one over on you. And Penix can see that and then throw that post with anticipation such that the safety coming from the other side won't come ruin the party. And you can see him process that. And I do think that once you kind of see what, like, if you're watching a deep pass play and you look at the coverage and you understand what the coverage is, and you look at the play and you understand what the play is, and then you look at the quarterback and you can see in real time how he goes through that same process you just went through, you can, I think you can kind of tell what's going through their head, and you can see Penix like clock the safety, and then immediately go to the post because he knows what it means when a safety's over there. And that's not stuff you get all the time in college. That's stuff you need to have in the pros. That is a prerequisite for the pros. But honestly, that's the kind of stuff that make a good-looking college QB not translate to the NFL if they can't have that. And Penix has that. So I honestly think, and again, this is a deep ball thing. So if you get, he just throws home runs and we're worried about him in this intermediate, in this short game, how does he run the short game, that kind of thing. And I get it. But if you're an NFL team going, wow, actually, maybe we will take Penix, in the 20s or something. If you're the Steelers or something like that, maybe we will take Penix. We don't know how much of Russell Wilson. We got a 1-year deal on him. Maybe we will take Penix. Or if you're somebody like the Raiders or the Broncos who maybe want that, but maybe they'll trade down to try to recoup some day 2 capital because they're still reeling from the Russell Wilson trade, and then they could probably still get Penix. Like if I'm the Broncos, I'm thinking about it. And so I get it. I that would be maybe the singular thing that drives him up my board the most, is the fact that you can see how he sees it and that he is responding to what defenders do, as opposed to watching a receiver run a route and just waiting for that route to look like it's open. You don't want that. That is going to be slow. That's going to be way more difficult to like be precise with timing. It's going to be like inaccurate timing. And it's just, you're just not going to see stuff get open as often because you got to wait for everything to develop. But if you know where a D-back is, and you understand the leverage that they're in and what that means, you can open up a lot more options. When I say leverage, if a cornerback, depending on where his hips are, right? If his hips are faced to the outside, and he is lining himself up to the inside of a receiver, right? Essentially meaning that his hips are facing that receiver. And that's the way that a D-back might play it, where, okay, if you're going to break to the inside, you kind of have to go through me, but then he's backing off too far so that this thing's just going to cut underneath him. Like, you can see that that's going to happen ahead of time if you're used to looking at DBs, right? And again, that is a skill that some quarterbacks are better at than others, is looking at that D-back and saying, oh, I see exactly what's going to happen here. I know where this receiver is going to break his route off, and I know it's going to win because that guy backed off too far. So you can then throw with anticipation. And having that anticipation is like the thing that separates the men from the boys a little bit in the NFL. You can be an NFL QB without anticipation, but you're not going to be a good NFL QB without anticipation. And then it's just the kind of the basic, like when you watch, like I think I watched 4 for Penix, and if he ends up being a Viking, I'll probably watch all of his games. But in the games that I watched, you can, there was never a moment where I was like, he just doesn't know what he's looking at. And you can see that with other college QBs where you're just like, oh, he just had no idea what was going on there. And he just started watching receivers and hoping somebody came open. You never saw that with Penix. He always understood who he was playing, what he was seeing. So I would call him a cerebral quarterback, maybe. And it's funny, he's older, he's like really cerebral, he's got an injury history. It's like this dude is the most like 32-year-old bridge QB coded guy. Like this guy has so many Joe Flacco particles. It's so funny. And I actually think that like old man Joe Flacco might be an okay comp for him. Or, like non-playoff, get really hot. Well, actually, maybe he is the guy that just like games in the playoffs and gets really hot, because he did have probably the best game of his season against Texas, but then he kind of had the worst game of his season in the championship. So I don't know. But that's not the kind of stuff that I really care a lot about when it comes to a quarterback. But that home run hitter thing is still kind of kicking around in my mind. And I think that sort of ties into the accuracy stuff. And then just the fact that what Washington's offense is, was just really aggressive, really just hunting the explosive play all the time. And I think it kind of messed up the sample that you're working with. And I think it's one of those things that maybe it's like breaking my brain, because I just don't think I care that much. And I'm surprised to hear how much NFL teams care about the like distribution of depths of target that Penix had, which has way more to do with the defenses he faced. It's just like, yeah, man, like you Pac-12 defenses gave up a lot of deep balls. Like, are you new here? Like, this is what happens. But what I do care about is the misses. And some of those misses weren't difficult balls, right? Sometimes you did just like whiff a really bad one. And in particular, you probably remember a miss if you watched the national championship game on a 4th down that happened. Why those misses happen is, I think, at the core of my Penix evaluation, and it's why it sinks him below these upper echelon guys that are all going top 10 for me. So let me explain myself. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And for some legal info, claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. So most of the stuff that I've talked about so far today is positive, or positive with caveats, right? Like, this is the stuff I like about Penix. I like that he will trust his receiver. Those deep balls were successful. You can't argue against that, right? He found a way. And the fact that he had a total stud that breaks every game that he plays, hey, that ain't a knock on him, right? If you got it, use it, right? Hey, and if he comes to Minnesota, he's got Justin Jefferson. So like that translates. And I love the way that he processes downfield and all that. The problem to me is accuracy, not necessarily that he doesn't choose the short game enough. And that, Washington didn't run a timing-based offense, which makes him, we'll call it a weird scheme fit for what Kevin O'Connell usually does, where everything, all these routes break off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you want to progress through that. I'm not super worried about that because it's just not what Washington did. And a lot of these coaches aren't completely retailoring their offense all the time, right? Like there are, especially in college, there is like the offense this guy runs. And so you just develop the skill set you develop being in that offense, right? So I'm not like super worried about the only a home run hitter thing. What I am worried about is just the fact that he misses a lot. If you compare him to, say, the other like top 6 in accuracy percentage, this is PFF's charting. He's, I think, 5th. I think the only guy that's got a worse accuracy percentage, hilariously, is Drake May, who's throwing off platform all the time and, winging these weird ones, which I've talked about how that annoys me too. But with Penix, it's standing in the pocket and just whiffing. Like it's not even often under pressure. And part of it is the way that pressure affects him. And one of the key things to any QB evaluation, what is his pressure response? Not how much do I like his pressure response? Not what are his stats against pressure? You're not asking how good is he against pressure. You're asking how does he want to respond to it, right? With Caleb Williams, it's a scramble, right? With Jaden Daniels, it's scramble and run. With with Bo Nix, it's get the ball out. And with Penix, it's I will abandon my platform, and it's not unlike Drake May. I'll abandon my platform and try to throw off platform, right? So he'll throw like fadeaway jumpers kind of, right? He'll be falling away. He won't have his feet, and he'll just try to wing it with all arm. And I think that Penix has, I don't know what the radar gun said or whatever, but I would bet that he has, in terms of just arm strength, just like if you just like stood feet shoulder width apart, you didn't get to do any rotational stuff and you just had to wing it, I bet he's got a decently strong arm. But he relies on that in those off-platform moments so much that it starts to creep into his game when he's not under pressure. And when he is just trying to set up and throw, throwing a deep ball requires you to like stand up through it a little bit and get, you want to get some air under it, right? So you want almost like a higher motion than you want if you're like driving a ball in there into the slant. And he does stand up, but he does it too violently, and he'll actually like lose control of his weight that way. And you can see the telltale sign. You can see this with a lot of college quarterbacks, but his is like really pronounced, is when he sets that front foot to throw, his back foot will slide back. And when he is following through, his front foot actually goes behind the other foot. He rotates his feet that much. And you don't want that. QBs are rotational athletes, and that means that they're torquing their body, right? The entire point of a throwing motion is to take all of the tension in your body, twist it up, and then untwist it violently, right? And if you think about it, like this is the way that I described it in one of my wide left pieces, which I wrote a wide left article about all of these quarterbacks, about some facet of their game that like interested me, whether they were good or bad at it, and kind of tutorials for here's how you do a scramble drill featuring Caleb Williams. And it was biomechanics for Penix. And if you think about like if you like roll up a towel and then you like kind of smack it, right? You hold one end of that towel, and all of the tension that you created when you rolled it up comes out the other side because you're holding the one side down. If you roll up a towel and you just drop it and both sides untwist at the same time, there will be no power to that, right? It will just like loosely untwist. So when you jump pass, like, I mean, the super Tarvaris Jackson, Tim Tebow jump pass, right? You lose that entirely, right? There is no way to generate torque if your feet are not on the ground. But if your foot is slipping back, it tells me that your weight is going up with your posture. You want your posture to go up when you throw a deep ball a little bit, just for the angle of it and just for that, just to like get some air under it. But you don't want like a violent motion. You don't want inertia going up. And that's what you can see with Penix. Beyond that, you saw, and actually I thought this got better at his pro day. So that's one of those things that you're looking for that actually does matter to me. But in his tape, at least, he had this sideways arm angle that what you usually want is when you're coming through, you want your elbow to essentially lead the ball, and you want the ball to be above your head. So if you want to be the coolest dude the coolest dude in school, you can probably determine if a pass will be accurate with decent results if you pause and you just look at right when the ball is at its highest point and look at if it's over the helmet or not. And you can be like, yeah, that one's going to be a miss. That one's not going to be a miss, right? Because if you have that arc, that perfect like parabola that goes up and down, that's straight and it's nice and it's pointed at the target, you're going to be really consistently accurate. If that parabola instead goes out and then back, think about that. Think about the motion that you're putting on the football, right? You have that ball coming back across. So unless you let go of it at the perfect moment where that angle is still at your target, you're going to be applying like a horizontal force to that ball that you do not want, right? This is why the sidearm is so hard, why it's so cool when Matt Stafford did it in the Super Bowl. So if you let go of it late, that thing is going to come in, and since he's a lefty, I guess, that's going to come in right on you. If you hold it too long, it's going to come into your right. And if you hold it, if you let go of it too early, it's going to come out to your left, and you're going to miss that way. So he sprays him. That's it. He sprays him. And that's a really difficult thing. There's like a couple of mechanical things to fix that cause that. And so like when there's one, I'm not like 100% worried about it. When there's many, I get a little more worried about it. And when you're an older prospect, which means you've been in college for 5 years, how come this didn't get fixed yet? Right? And then you get into the more proxy analysis kind of stuff with age of, were you just dunking on 19-year-olds, that kind of stuff. Those are more statistical caveats, not necessarily, we're kind of engaging on a different plane, so I'm not too worried about those things. But you do still get the like old dog learning new tricks thing. There are a lot of studies that have been done on this, and it's like around like 21, 22 is when it gets a lot harder to learn things like a new language, and to learn things like a new skill. So once you're at like 23, 24, there actually is like a drop off there. That's part of why older prospects get devalued. But really what concerns me is this is where the injury history comes in. Not only the risk of re-aggravating it, which is real and part of it, and probably would always sink him around, but also because I wonder if rotation on those knees when he was healing from those various knee injuries and you couldn't rotate the same way you would on a normal pass with healthy knees, I wonder if he developed that habit. And will he be able to undevelop it now that his knees are both surgically repaired? That's a real question. And so when I value Mike Penix, I look at, okay, like this is my thought process of any QB. What are the problems, right? Nobody's perfect. So what are your things, right? What things do we want to fix you? And then the next question is, are they going to get fixed? And the answer can be, yeah, of course. Yeah, here's how I would fix it, right? This is my JJ McCarthy thing. Here's your problem with the deep ball and this, and I think I would fix it this way, and I think that it is possible too. Therefore, I'm not super worried about it. And this is where you get very subjective too, right? And depending on the QB coach, right? Like, does Josh McCown see it the same way I do? Big question. No idea, right? But with Penix, it's, okay, this is all the stuff that needs to get fixed. Kind of a long list of mechanical issues between, the weight distribution thing, and then you won't see his hips come through. That's kind of because of that, or that's kind of part of the same thing. So he's not rotating right. He's not shifting his weight right. His arm angle is wrong. Like, my goodness, right? And he doesn't like to set up his base, and he'll fall away from pressure too much. So like all these things, will they get fixed? I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that his problems will get fixed more so than I am skeptical that someone like JJ McCarthy's problems will get fixed. That's why I like him better. And if you have a different version of that argument and you like Penix better than McCarthy, more power to you. We'll see how it all plays out. But that's where I'm at. And so that puts me in this world where if I'm making him the guy and I'm staking my career on him, I'm really worried about that. I want to take him in a part of the draft where I'm no longer staking my career on him, aka the second round. Second round QB doesn't work out. I don't think you necessarily get fired over that. That's where I'm at on Penix. So hopefully you at least have an understanding of Michael Penix's game, and whatever you make of that, if you value what I just described higher than I'm valuing it, or lower than I'm valuing it, then sure. But hopefully you kind of understand that that's the nature of the game. That's the devil that you're dancing with. So hey, look, it's the weekend. I'll see you guys Monday. If there's news, we'll talk about it. If not, we'll probably start shifting into D-line stuff here soon. I'll see you all for whatever that is. And as always, Skull.